Welcome back to Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. I'm your host, Jon Braddock, author of Click Here When I Die, and founder of My Life and Wishes, the Legacy Vault, because the scavenger hunt ends here. First, before we get started, I want to shout out to my good friend, Cynthia Tirado, founder of Notary Dynamics. She is a highly trained professional mobile notary and certified notary trust delivery agent. If you happen to be in the greater San Diego area and you have needs for a notary, reach out to Cynthia. And I want to thank you, Cynthia, for suggesting I connect with today's guest. Without you, this wouldn't have been possible. Okay, so today's guest is an absolute powerhouse in the world of law, legacy, and empowerment. She's known by many as the Kingdom Shero Lawyer in Heels, a devoted Christian, wife, mom, and the founding partner of Kuyateh Law. They're based in San Diego. But what truly sets attorney Ivette Kuyateh apart is her unwavering mission, helping families protect their assets, preserve their wealth, and find peace of mind through smart, strategic estate planning. Yvette's journey is nothing short of remarkable. She's a former prosecutor and a seasoned litigator who's handled hundreds of trials. And today, she's turned to that same fierce advocacy toward empowering others with financial literacy and the legal tools that safeguard their future. She's delivered more than 100 keynotes and webinars nationwide, training families, first responders, and service providers on topics like financial abuse, domestic violence, and wealth preservation. She also dedicates one day each month to providing free legal counsel to victims of abuse, living out her belief that everyone deserves protection and peace of mind. She's been featured on NBC San Diego, CBS 8, WealthWave TV, and the San Diego Business Journal's Women of Influence in Law. Not only that, she's been recognized as a Super Lawyers Rising Star for 2 consecutive years. And so today we're driving into a few estate planning nightmares that she has seen firsthand, like families setting and forgetting the trusts, leaving assets directly to minor children, or creating those very well-intentioned, but all too risky, I love you wills. We'll explore what can go wrong and how to avoid the heartache and chaos that follows. Yvette, it's such a pleasure to have you here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jon. Thank you, Cynthia, for the introduction. I echo your sentiments there, and I'm honored. I'm honored to be here and, chatting about what we both do, which is really just we're on the same team. We're trying to protect people. We're in the business of protecting people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've all seen far too often people without plans, people with poorly written plans, or the nightmare scavenger hunt that people have to go on in order to try and find everything, which all of which are expensive, exhausting, time consuming, and many times leaving families, I shouldn't go as far as saying hating the deceased person, but certainly angry with them.
Lots of emotions, for sure.
Absolutely. So, first of all, you were a prosecutor and a litigator, and then you transitioned over to the estate planning world.
Right.
When did that occur?
Wow, it's hard to believe it's been it's almost 8 years now, 2018. So, yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
COVID got people starting to think about their own mortality a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we were pre-COVID, and I think because of, my time as a prosecutor being in the courtroom, I missed it. So out the gate, I started doing lots of events and seminars and talking. And, I think those of us that have been trained to, the court has a little bit of presentation to it, right? Of finessed art. So I was doing a lot of the webinars before people got on that bandwagon that you see now, where everybody's doing an estate planning seminar. We were out the gate doing that pre-COVID.
Right. And I imagine, when as a prosecutor, um, you have to deliver a very clear message so that the judge understands it. So
Yeah.
it's natural to see that you can transition that and to have nice conversations and educational formats with people so they understand.
Yeah, it's crucial. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's start with the one that I see all the time,
Okay.
and I know you see it as well. You know, people finally get around to creating their estate plan or their
Mm-hmm.
trust.
Mm-hmm.
Then they tuck it away in a drawer
Oh
and they
boy.
forget about it. Why is, set it and forget it such a dangerous mindset when it comes to estate planning?
Yeah. You know, before I tell you why, uh, it, the brain is so, we protect our brain from things we don't want to think about. Death is a big one. And so it's hard for people to wrap their head around disability or death. And then they're like, okay, I did it. I don't want to think about it again. Boom. So then you have the next wave of what I call the avoidance, right? You avoid doing it. And when you do it, you avoid looking at it again, thinking, I did it and I'm good. And that's troublesome because what I tell people all the time is if I gave you a car with no gas, how good would that be to you? Right? Probably not very, you're not going to get very far. And our estate plans are a lot like that. We want to keep them upkept, right? You want to do the upkeep, make sure everything under the hood is good and current and it's gassed up, it's juiced up for that. When you need it, it's going to work. The time to find out it's not going to work, right, is not at 7 a.m. when you're trying to take your kids to the school and you got to be at work at 8. Same thing with your estate plan. The time to find out it's not working is when dad's consciousness isn't there anymore. Now he's lacking capacity and we can't make changes, or we don't remember what certain things were anymore, right? Or when somebody passes, that's not the time to find out.
Right. Well, it's like, we all want to live long and healthy lives,
Yeah.
right? And in order to do that, we do things a little differently. Maybe we get up and walk in the morning, maybe we jog, maybe we go to the gym, lift some weights and do stuff. And it's that daily, monthly, yearly activity in and out that
Yeah.
makes sure, hopefully, we stay around for a long time. But the car with no gas analogy is spot on, and same with the trust. If we don't keep the trust in shape,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to do what
Yeah.
all the good intentions were to.
And I'll give you some specific examples of that. So,
Absolutely.
by this point I do a lot of fixing of outdated and broken, what I call broken trust, right? There may be language in there. Somebody, I think the oldest one I've had up to now was like they did it in the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken. Well, the Civil Procedure Code, the Probate Code, right? Actual laws have since changed codifications that number one, just by the time and passage of time, are going to be outdated, which can be problematic. But as you can imagine, in the 70s, two parents and two kids, we're fast forwarding now to 2025. Those are now two parents, three kids, and 8 grandchildren and some great grandchildren on the way. So life looks a lot more different than it did back then. And so there's a whole lot of updating that we needed to go in there and do. A lot of times it's, not even that, but just my kids now married or remarried, and their family changes. Maybe you like your children's spouses, maybe you don't. All important things to think about as life happens, right? And then recently, we all know that the big beautiful tax bill just got passed. Well, what it did was it eliminated the sunset provision as the federal state exemption. And in plain English, that just means that right now, the federal exemption limit on estate planning taxes is about 14 million per spouse. It's not a problem for most people, but 6 months ago when estate planning attorneys, we didn't know what that was going to be. We were bracing for that law to end at the end of this year and thinking that was going to go down to pre-2017 levels, which would have been around 3 or 4 million. Well, if you live in San Diego, you got a home, maybe two homes and a couple assets, that could be you really quickly. So staying on top of what the laws are doing and changing is even more reason, especially, what I tell people, depending on, not to get political, but it doesn't matter who's in office, there's always going to be some changes and you need to be paying attention to that. It could affect you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I was having a conversation recently with someone in California as well, and talking about, so many people don't consider themselves millionaires because, they're,
Hmm.
but if you own a home, like you say, in San Diego area, whatever, you might have bought that for
Right,
300,000, but today it's worth 2.5 million,
right.
right? And so, boom, all of a sudden, you do have assets, and
Yeah,
they do need to be protected.
yeah.
The other thing you mentioned too, which, if you don't, you talk about the trust from the 70s, a lot can
Hmm.
change. Uh, you know, are your powers of attorney still appropriate?
Hmm.
Are your trustees still appropriate? I mean, maybe your one adult child has proven himself to be totally financially irresponsible.
Right.
You had assigned them as your financial power of attorney a few years back.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, which is
Scary.
why I tell people, instead of thinking about DIY, because a lot of people think that, and we could talk for hours on the perils of that,
Yeah.
but a professional estate planning attorney, an expert in the field, knows the questions to ask
Hmm.
you, you
Hmm.
know, things that you're not thinking of top of mind.
Right.
And maybe nothing changes at all, but
Yeah.
maybe things do, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, my two kids, they can both be joint agents and joint trustees. And I look at them and I say, how often do they agree on dinner? Right? It's hard to agree on basic things. Now you want to put them in a situation where to get anything done, they got to be on one accord and you might want to rethink that. And I tell people, I personally myself, I know there are some attorneys who have a different theory when it comes to that, but for me, I'm a past litigator. I know the courts. If there's anything where there's a gray area, I know we're going to court to get it fixed, and I just won't do it. I won't do something like that where I know there's a probability that we're going to get hauled into court because those two won't be able to agree.
Oh, absolutely. Michelle and I have 6 children between us. And, like you say, growing up, the kids couldn't agree on what to have for dinner, what game we were going to play, what movie to go see. And, a lot of the kids fought a lot, right? And if we think that, your two sons or your two daughters or your son and daughter who fought the whole time growing up and still don't spend a lot of time hanging out with each other, if you think they're going to agree,
Hmm.
they're not.
Right.
And that gets expensive, right? Because I recently talked to an attorney who was telling me about it. It was a very similar situation. Neither one could agree. They both had to go out and engage their own legal counsel involved. And by the time they got things settled and set and done, they each dumped another 20 plus $1,000 into legal fees.
Yeah.
Takes away from the estate pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly. Yeah. Well, e-lawyers, as you know, we don't work for free most of the time.
Most of the time.
We
Although
got,
you do periodically, I understand.
well, that's
So
just, I really believe in just got to give back. Your time treasures talent. So, yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. So interesting. So we know that's an issue. So we need to, update things.
Update.
Another thing that you and I were chatting about, that really can hit home, I think, for a lot of people is leaving assets directly to minor children. I mean,
Mm.
yeah, it sounds like a loving thing. It sounds simple, but legally and financially, it can create a real mess. Can you explain like some of the problems and common mistakes?
Yeah. Well, as you say, it makes sense in theory. I have children. I want them to inherit. I want to put them as my beneficiaries. What most parents don't realize is a child is a minor and they will not be able to take possession of that asset, that life insurance policy, right? That retirement account, that brokerage account. I, I've even had parents put their children on title with them for property. And that's mostly a cultural practice, I think. But the intention is well, like I said, but it's they don't understand that legally that child cannot take possession. And so the second thought is, well, their other parents or somebody will just go cash the check for that child. Well, that's not going to happen. They can have bio dad or bio mom around, and the court's still going to have to get involved. And now we have to have biological surviving dad or biological surviving mom or grandma, whoever is taking care of that child, hauled in to file a a guardianship petition over that minor's estate so that the judge can name ex Susie, Aunt Susie, dad, mom, whoever as the estate guardian for that minor child. And it gets worse. Not only is it expensive and time consuming, they may have to post a bond depending on the asset amount. So it is very complex and it is very draining. Meanwhile, the funds are locked up. Nobody can access them. And why? Because the bank or that company, they have a fiduciary duty to not give away that money until there's a court order signed by a judge saying Aunt Susie or mom and dad are appointed guardians of this minor's estate, aka the money, that minor for that money. So um, it is awful. I never recommend it, never ever. Like in the case of that real property, um, I don't know how it happened, but it did. And that child, who's now a teenager, is on title. We can't even get that child off without having to go into court to file the petition from the same, and everybody's alive, nobody's died. It's just that they've given that right, and now that's technically, well, not technically, but legally, that is that child's asset. And child can't sign off the deed. They have to get guardian to come in, get appointed, and the parents are like, forget it. That's too expensive. It's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars to try to get this done. And now you're telling me I have to get a bond maybe for this asset. So it is a simple thing, and in theory, it makes sense, but in practice, it is a nightmare.
Here, let me throw you, lob you a big softball.
Okay.
Um, so that is a nightmare,
Yeah.
and it's expensive. But what's the one thing that people could do that would be less expensive right now?
Yeah. Put it in a trust,
There
right?
we go.
And even better, I mean, you can still have your designations and your trust for your children, but now you can even do sub-trusts for your children, where each child might get their own sub-trust with their own conditions or whatever is important to you as a parent. But now, if you pass and your spouse passes, and somebody has to take care of them, you've already designated who is going to be the trustee, who's going to be the guardian of their estate. It's already all laid out, and now we're avoiding probate court. Not only that, but you're out of the realm of a bond being required because the court wants to ensure Aunt Susie's not going to just go take the money and go to Italy, right? Now they're acting as a trustee in a fiduciary capacity. So there's more protection there than leaving it outside of a trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, it's interesting. As you know, a trust designed properly, updated and reviewed, not set it and forget it, is designed not only to preserve assets, transfer wealth, but keep the family out of court.
Yep.
When that doesn't work, you go to court, you go to probate. And I was recently interviewing an attorney in New York City who told me that right now, to get on the docket of the probate court in King County is 2 years.
Wow.
I don't know how long it takes to go through probate in San Diego, and obviously it depends on the size of the estate and the amount of assets, but it doesn't happen in a month.
Right. No. I mean, not even a probate case full on, but I'll say, just a conservatorship petition, right? We're just trying to take care of grandma who's got dementia, Alzheimer's. We're trying to get a conservatorship appointed for her. That's 6 months out unless there's an emergency. So if, grandma is trying to get some checks cashed or something just to do basic living, all of that is on pause until that. But yeah. And real quick, I want to go back to the previous question, because it's really important that the people know this part, which a big reason why people put their minor children directly in divorced families is, well, I don't want my ex to handle the money, right? Or I don't trust my ex partner or whatever. And that's fair, right? That's fair. What people should know is, again, you do the trust, you name them, and you can even add exclusions. Whereas you can exclude by name, right, the other person that you would not ever trust to manage. That way, in the rare case that they did file a petition, right, you've already excluded that, and it would get kicked out pretty quickly.
That's a very good piece of advice. Yeah, I was not aware you could do that, so I like that.
Oh yeah, we exclude people all the time, as mainly for reasons, whereas like adult children, we're excluding their ex-spouses of the adult children or anything like that. We don't want your ex-spouse making decisions or acting as trustee if they're no longer in the family.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. All right, so we're talking about ex spouses, those kind of things. Yeah. So it brings me to the I love you will. Very, very well intentioned, leaving everything to a spouse or a loved one, but you've seen that creates major problems. Can you talk about the I love you will and the nightmares that can turn into?
Yeah. Well, the I love you, when I say I love you will, I'm talking about, a DIY. You get a piece of paper, you're maybe on your deathbed, and you're like, I leave my house to my son, Charlie. Sign, done, that kind of thing. And it's just a will. But let's back up even more, because a lot of people don't understand that all a will is a set of instructions for the court. That's it. That's all it is. Now the court's got to take that I love you will, and they got to determine, is it valid? Is there anyone contesting it? Were they in their right mental condition when this was written, et cetera, et cetera. So that's problem number one, is the validity will probably almost always be challenged in a DIY in that situation. But what I really wanted to talk about as far as the I love you will is the failure to plan your estate for tax consequences, right? So I talked about briefly about the big beautiful tax bill, right? 14 million plus right now for each spouse, not an issue. And the issue here isn't really that, but the issue is, at least here in California, is Uncle Sam's going to come knocking when your child takes possession of this home that you left in your will. Again, very well intentioned. I want to make sure my daughter gets it. Boom, there we go. And what's going to happen is the county assessor's office at the end of the day is going to transfer it to your son or whoever gets it, right? Sure. And then the property is going to be reassessed depending on the current fair market value. Problem number one, which we may not be able to avoid anyway. But the bigger problem is without a trust, you've now taken out that step up in basis allowance for your children. And now they're on the hook for not only the reassessment, but the capital gains taxes that's going to come knocking on that property. So let me kind of recap. If you would leave it in a trust, okay, and the trust distributes it according to your wishes, okay, great. Your children are going to pay capital gains taxes from the time they inherit the property to the time they sell it. Cool. That's best case scenario. We want to pay taxes. We want to do the right thing legally. We don't want to pay more than we have to. Agreed? Okay. If you don't put it in a trust, you leave it in I love you will, there's no step up in basis. They don't get to step up into your shoes because they're inheriting it through the trust. They lose that. And now they're on the hook, not from when they inherited the house to when they sold it, from all the time you had that in your possession, which is, like you said, if you bought it for $300,000 and it's 2.5, that's a big tax bill, much bigger.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, because if you inherit it today at 2.5 million and you sell it in 10 years for 3, the capital gains on the 500 is a lot better than the 2.2 million.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, a trust is just a remarkable tool. And to me, if there's any big takeaway, and hopefully all of our audience and listeners through all the shows that we do where we talk about trust, I mean, will is a great first step, but it doesn't avoid probate. And it's, as you said, it's a set of instructions. It just tells the court what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
but then they have to determine the validity of it all, and make the decision. Yeah. The trust just bypasses all of that and lets all the wishes and things that I want to have happen with my property, for my family, kids, to happen. Now, is getting a trust going to cost me a little bit more than just a will, guardianship papers, etc.? Yes, there's no question. Mm-hmm. Is it going to cost a heck of a lot less than family going through probate? Oh yeah, a fraction.
And I'll jump in on this one because for some people it's like, well, I still don't want to deal with it. I hear you, Yvette. I hear you, Jon. I don't care. Let them deal with it anyway. But I'll say this, and this gets a lot of people thinking. Probate equals public record, right? And if it's not about the money, privacy, there's no price on privacy. And unfortunately, we do live in a litigious society. We know that. But even beyond that, I have law enforcement, teachers, nurses, doctors, lawyers, right? All of these service professions, correction officers, right, that serve the public. And it might be worthwhile to them to protect their peace of mind that if something happens to me, my loved ones not only aren't going to have to go to probate court, but my assets, the names of my heirs, the names of the people I love are now not going to be a matter of public record. There's very few things in the court system that can be closed off, right? Probate is not one of them. For the most part, it is all public record. This is how we know, on TMZ who had what, Beverly Hills Mansion and the mess. This is how we know because it is public record. And so when I talk to people in these professions, I mean, I wish I wasn't having these conversations, but it's true. Um, what's what is the price tag on that? You really have to ask yourself that, right? And there's, to me, my family, that's priceless. As you said, I'm a former prosecutor. I don't want somebody that I put in jail to know all of a sudden who my loved ones are. That's a scary thought. Equally scary, again, probate equals public, right? It's now it's a public proceeding where not only things can be contested, but my creditors, if I have creditors, can come in and try to seek, compensation for whatever claims they're saying my estate owed, which is also scary too for some families. So public equals private. I mean, probate equals public. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this hopefully won't come as a surprise to our audience, but yes, there are a lot of bad human beings who prey on people
Yeah.
who have lost a loved one because they find out it's a will, it's a public record. This person is inheriting a lot of money,
Oh yeah.
and um, and I've seen it happen with former military who have deceased. The widow or widower now has money, and they're getting hit up on Facebook and other places where they're reaching out saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about you lost someone they've never heard of," and talking about, "Well, I can certainly help you navigate the troubles that you're having." And it's like, red flags, red flags.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So before we kind of wrap up, I have to ask
Mhm.
your brand and persona, the Kingdom Shero Lawyer in Heels. I mean, it's bold, it's confident, and it clearly resonates. What does the title mean to you, and how does your faith and purpose influence the way you serve?
Yeah. Well, the kingdom part goes first. And that's why that's at the very beginning of it. I put it out there. I do not hide my faith. Matter of fact, I oftentimes will pray with my clients, for my clients. We're dealing with life and death things, right? And so very often it's, on a personal note, it's almost like a ministry to me. They're trusting you with some of the most difficult times in their life. If we're dealing with somebody just passed or somebody's passing, they're in hospice, or, dad's lost memory, mom's lost memory, it's just, and I get to do what I do because of God carrying me through my journey to where I'm at. So to me, it's like, he's my CEO. He's the one that tells me you're going to work here, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. He's my CEO. So the kingdom part, that's why that goes first. And then the Shero
Amen to that.
Lawyer. Thanks. The Shero Lawyer, I mean, yeah, I am an advocate. I still am sometimes in the courtroom advocating from time to time. Will always be that. And so I just look at it like, why not? Wear the heels, go into court, you know?
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
like it.
thank
It's
you.
it's your brand. And
It is.
I think it's beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
um Yeah, this has been powerful stuff, and I love this. Is there anything that I didn't bring up or ask you that you were like, man, I wish he asked me that question?
Yeah. Let's touch on the importance of the other part of what I do, right? Which is not just the legal documents, but I'm looking holistically at where a family is and where they want to be, right? I'm a uh, financial educator. So I look at, okay, you're setting for retirement, you want to stay in your home, what's going to go to your kids? Great. But when I'm doing the funding and we're talking about what assets are going to get retitled, what assets are going to have the trust as beneficiary through the funnel, I'm always thinking, always thinking, am I going to accomplish what they want? What they want is not the legal documents necessarily. What they want is, I want to make sure my kids don't have a headache and I actually am leaving something for them. Because at the end of the day, that's what clients actually are hiring me for, right? They want that. And the conversations that I have with them that I don't believe enough estate planning attorneys are having have to do with, let's look at what's under the hood and let's piece it apart, right? Are you actually involved and actively involved into looking at what are your accounts doing? Is your money working for you? Do you have enough life insurance? Do you have long-term care? Do you have certain things in place so that when life happens, because it will happen to all of us, right? When life happens, whether you get sick or your parent gets sick or your kid gets sick, somebody getting sick, you have somewhat of a cushion, you have a safety net, you have other resources that you're not going to have to spend, and now we leave nothing. So this happens a lot with, you know, my Latino community. To them, the home is everything. La casa, that is the 401k, that is their golden jewel. They want to make sure the kids get it. My job is like, that's great. Your children may not even want it. You've sacrificed, you've got a home, they're now in the careers. What do you have in place to make sure you can retire and stay retired and you're going to be okay if there's a heart attack, there's cancer, there's something that happens to one of you, especially for the men, because we know statistically men are going first. Women outlive men. And what I see a lot is there's no planning around that. And when the men gets the first health issue, all the money, all the assets, it all goes to care for him. What's left over for the wife? And that's scary for her, right? So I am one of the few, I think, that really, because of the training I have, I'm looking at it holistically and I'm having those really uncomfortable conversations. And again, I think we need to go beyond in this profession to really look and get with teams that can help them. Have people, financial advisors, insurance brokers, people around that you can count on and you can make sure that they're coming around and we're not just doing the binder that like you said, set it and forget it. We're really looking at, is this going to work at the end of the day?
I love that. And one of the things that I see a lot, and I think it's really important for families if they really want to leave that legacy and really protect everything, that their estate planning attorney, their financial advisor, maybe insurance agent if the financial advisor isn't doing the life insurance or long-term care policies, and the accountant. Those four plus yourself makes up that pentagon, if you will, or a five-sided star or whatever it wants to be, that keeps your family on track and keeps your planning in place.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's really, really important to have that.
Absolutely. So we're up against our time. I really, really appreciate you joining us today.
My pleasure, Jon.
Um, how can our listeners get in touch with you or reach out or find out about your educational uh, teachings and things?
Awesome. Thank you. Yep. Well, Kingdom Shero Lawyer and Heels on Instagram and Facebook. My website is just www.kuyatehlawgroup.com. And our phone number, which you can call in anytime, 619-535-0066. And me and my team would be happy to answer any questions on anything we discussed or anything they just want to run by.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And we will include all those links in the show notes. So if you're watching this or listening, they're below. You can go get them. Ivette, thank you again for your time, your energy, and being such a fierce advocate, not only for your clients, but for the broader community.
Jon, my pleasure. Thank you for the work you do and having me on your show today. This has been really fun. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much. And to our listeners, if you take one thing away from today's conversation with Ivette, estate planning isn't set it and forget it moments, right? It's an ongoing act of love. It's an act of protection, and it's about your legacy. So thanks again for tuning in. If you've gotten value from this, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't wait until it's too late. Until next time, take care of your loved ones and make sure they're never left with a scavenger hunt, because the scavenger hunt ends right here.